In a workshop tucked away in Phnom Penh, where time seems to have stood still, a French entrepreneur named Dominique Eluet has been taking on wild challenges for over 22 years, bringing to life things most would now deem impossible. Far from Europe, the Americas or Japan, he and his team of Khmer artisans craft Roman swords, tomahawk axes, Japanese katanas, and other weapons from long-lost eras. This story begins with a chance encounter, a meeting with a gunsmith that would lead him straight into the world of samurais, and the demanding precision of Japanese master craftsmen, whose skills take years to perfect.
When I arrived in Cambodia, I was offered to employ a blacksmith, and I accepted. I pulled him in a corner. We made him a shelter so that he could work. He brought his anvil and his apprentice, and he asked the question, "What shall I do?" Receiving a man who was at the time still gunsmith in Bergerac, he told me you should make Japanese swords. I didn't know what a Japanese sword was, and so I said yes. What a great idea, since I didn't have to choose a particular thing. We're going to make Japanese sword. What I find amusing about the story is that if I had known at that time what was Japanese sword, I would never have made this decision. I have since discovered what a Japanese sword is, and it's so hard and complicated. It is a domain in which you can never reach perfection. It's impossible. In a field in which perfection is unattainable, means that it's a life work on a path of progress where we never get to the end. God, today, after more than 20 years, we are able to make things that are really starting to get good, applying difficult criteria.
Making an authentic katana, tento, or authentic wakizashi requires, above all, a rigorous selection of materials. Every single component must be flawless. Stingray skins, silk braids, natural lacquers, jackwoods, copper, brass. Each precious material is meticulously selected. For Dominique Eluet, founder of Citadel, excellence is out there. You just have to know where to look, no matter the country.
Starting with Japan. What I buy in Japan, almost only what I buy in Japan, it's silk. The silk braid from which the handles are woven. Because there is only in Japan that we find a braid made flat. It is not hollow, it is flat. So we buy this in Japan, and I use the best quality available, and I place an order about every 2 or 3 months in Japan. Next to that, next to the silk, in Japan we buy from time to time miyuki and what are called fushis and kashira. That is, yes, some little metal things who are made to finish the handles, but on most of the katana we make these parts ourselves. So, I buy in Japan once in a while, in a very rare way. Silk in a common way, everything else in a very occasional way. The wood, it's Cambodian wood, it's jack wood, as you saw earlier. The ray skin, that's important too, because the sword handles are covered with ray skin under the silk. There is ray skin. This is from we go to Kampong Sam, buy the fish, we clean them, we dry them, and it is our raw material. The lacquer. As much as possible we work with natural lacquer that comes from Cambodia. Copper. Brass, we buy it here at the market. Leather, when we need it, is not always the case, but we buy it here at the market too, in Phnom Penh. The stones, on the other hand, the stones we buy them at the market, and also in Japan to finish, to really finish, to bring out the last polishing, to bring out the temper line. We do it with finger stones, small pieces of stone, that we that we put on the thumb like that, and we pass all the edge again with these Japanese finger stones.
An authentic Japanese sword begins with an uncompromising selection of steel, the foundation of a high-quality blade. This French entrepreneur, based in Cambodia, has, through the study of ancient treaties and careful reflection on his own mistakes, learned to identify the finest materials. Carbon content plays a crucial role in the forging process, while mastering the tempering technique ensures the perfect balance between hardness and flexibility, the essential qualities of any sword blade. This balance is achieved through the Japanese method of selective tempering, in which a clay mixture is applied before the quenching process to cover the part of the blade meant to remain flexible, while leaving the edge and tip exposed, since these must, by necessity, remain hard and unyielding.
The steel, and this is very important, since to make a katana, that which is Japanese, we need that the blade is differential quenched, and that this is clearly visible. The first thing a Japanese looks at when he inspects a sword, it is the differential quenching. Stand out, and to bring it out, the blade must, of course, have received a differential quenching or earlier, and then there is a polishing of a particular nature, and make the quenching clearly visible. And for it to work, it is necessary to work with a steel that is suitable for this, and that is always as much as possible, even in France, steel bars of a steel called by its international name, 1000N75. In France it's called DNS7. So do we use steel? Because steel takes quenching iron. And why pure iron? Because pure iron, it is easy to work with. Ductile, it deforms easily when cold, and especially it does oxidize, not rust. So to make both guards and metal trimmings, it goes very, very well. It goes better than the rest. Contrary, of course, with pure iron, you can't make blades with it. Blades would be completely useless because they will not take quenching, so they won't be hard. They will simply be soft like that. Steel is needed to make a good blade. At the same time, the steel must not be too carbonaceous. In case, when we make a blade, as we do here, the differential quenching I was talking about earlier. Important because it allows with even if the blade is made of only one steel, which is usually the case here. It presents two different hardnesses and therefore two different flexibilities. A blade that is too flexible, it will not be sharp, it will not be effective, but if we have a blade too hard, it will break at the first shock a little serious. Differential quenching allows to have something that has these two qualities who are, however, antagonistic. The part of the blade you saw earlier, that it is covered by the clay mixture, receive when quenching a much more lighter quenching, and then the part that is free of clay becomes harder. The part which is free of clay will produce a crystallization called martensite, while on the part that is covered by the clay we will have some pearlite. We will have two different hardness, two different flexibilities. That is very, very important. This is what allows to have a good blade with only one steel. And this is what once allowed, as well as the Damascus allowed by making a composite to obtain good blades with bad steels, and with differential quenching, this allows to get a good blade even if we work with only one steel.
A persistent legend surrounding Japanese swords speaks of the blade being repeatedly quenched to enhance its quality. But as Dominique Eluer explains, it's not the finished blades itself that undergoes multiple temperings during forging. Rather, it's the blend of metals, the fusion of iron, carbon, and other elements that can be quenched several times until the ideal composition is achieved.
It doesn't make sense in the sense that every time you heat a blade beyond the blue, you cancel the previous quenching. Quenching several times is stupid and useless. If the quenching is good, well, it is good, and we keep it as it is, and if indeed it is not good, if there is a quenching defect, it happens from time to time when you have a piece of clay that jumps. So you're going to have irregularities or parts of the blade that may be badly quenched. Well, you start again the clay sheathing, and you start your quenching again. That's it. It probably comes from something else. Another legend where we talk about blades that have been folded several times. As is, when steel is made with a blast furnace, like the Japanese did, it was also done in Europe. It is still done today by the great masters. Japanese living national treasure they get, and all the people who do that in France, I know several they get when they have finished the process. A kind of big stuff like that. And then inside there is steel, there is iron, there is everything, and the first thing, the first work, and which is a considerable work, it would be to clear, in some way, this material which was produced by the blast furnace. And this is an extraordinarily long work, taking most of the time several days of work to several people who are hammering it to purify it, to get out all the crap that are in it. And then, when you deal with people who really know how to work, they are able to, after having broken the pieces that remain by simply looking at them to say if they are highly or weakly carbonaceous. There are even people who are capable of making several categories, like that. And then it is used to make ingots that will be used alone or in association to make Damascus or composite blades. So that's it, and that's it. It's real, and it's necessary to purify the steel. It is very important.
For Frenchmen living in Cambodia, the question of legitimacy in crafting a Japanese sword inevitably arises, just as it does for any weapon rooted in another culture. But to him, craftsmanship is a universal language. The answer lies not only in the metal, but also in the study of tradition and the insights of modern science. A true sword is not judged by the origin of its maker, but by the temper of its edge. His greatest victory is the recognition he's earned from the Japanese themselves, who recognize the blades forged in Cambodia as worthy of their legacy.
The same legitimacy that I have to make an ulu towards the Inuit. There are obviously several ways to see it. We can watch it, as I look at it. I mean, in a way, a tribute to people who have for hundreds and hundreds of years walked the path to perfection, of which I said at the moment that it is a path that does not end. And then there are the cold fish, who will say that we are only imitating Japanese swords because we are not Japanese. What the Japanese don't do, because they are people more reasonable, and who do not think in the same way. And so, well, I don't need to have a legitimacy. I want to make Japanese swords. I make Japanese swords, that's my problem. No one has to buy them, and no one is obliged to love them. Here is my legitimacy. It has already happened. Then Japanese have been asked about us, whether or not they know a Japanese sword maker in Cambodia, have confessed without being under torture, that indeed there was a firm, There is someone in Cambodia making Japanese sword. So the simple fact that they recognize it is an achievement. It is a success for us. It's already good. It is already unexpected.
While Citadel's Japanese swords have won over even the most demanding purists, this entrepreneur didn't stop with the art of Japan. Driven by passion, deep historical research, and increasingly original client requests, he has ventured into a wide range of traditions, crafting Scottish can-dos, Greek kopis, Inuit uluit, Iberian falcatas, Russian xiliars, and traditional hunting knives. He recalls, for instance, how he took on the challenge of forging Roman gladi and North American tomahawk axes.
Often it comes from conversations. I talk to people, and when they know a subject, I try to get information. Then I'll gather them. For example, the other day I was telling you about Roman gladius. I had a conversation with a client from Austria who is very interested in this. And he gave me the source, the best known source today on everything that are Romans. The antiquities, everything that was actually found, and thanks to that we know about what we make. The Roman gladius was made for 1,000 years. So it is useless to say that it evolved a lot since the day it became Roman, until the day it disappeared. So I find it interesting to know what we do. It's the same thing in medieval swords. 9th century sword, it's not a sword of the 14th century. It's so different that it jumps out at you, at least for people who are interested in the subject. Anachronisms, it's something that has always bothered me a little bit. For example, there was a very nice movie that was made years ago, and this was a really nice movie. It was called Excalibur. Maybe you saw it, and the film was beautiful. But I don't understand why we filmed something that is supposed to happen in the 7th century with armor from the 14th century. It takes something away from me, but it does not prevent me from appreciating the movie because it was really good, but it's a bit of a shame. So I like to respect as much as possible the historical aspect of things. And when I was little, I liked Davy Crockett, so I was watching stuff like that. So the tomahawk, which participated in the history of France, because the colonial troops, the French Marine Infantry, which was sent to Canada during the 7-Year War. If I remember well, the Carignan Saliers Regiment, they were all at the time equipped with hatchets. That was common, and that was serving for everything. With that in the nature, we do about everything. It is used for defense and cutting wood. It is used to light the fire. It is used for everything. And it's not very bulky. It's not very heavy. With tomahawk, we can go crazy. There we can have fun doing strange things. This is good for creativity.
This history enthusiast has traveled across continents and eras in search of ancestral knowledge, but he has also dedicated himself to research in his adopted homeland, Cambodia. The sacred Cambodian sword, known in Khmer as Preakan, draws its origins from Indian mythology and the rise of the Khmer Empire. A royal symbol, it embodies the power to crown or dethrone the Khmer kings.
Then there are other subjects on which it is necessary to remain close to the tradition. For example, the Preakan. Well, this one is not finished yet, but on the Preakan, on the traditional things, well, we remain traditional. We try to stick as much as possible to tradition.
The sacred Cambodian sword is a unique case. Unlike other historical weapons uncovered by archaeologists, it remains a singular, sacred, and mysterious artifact, even though a few replicas have been made over time. First mentioned in writings from the 12th century, it has had a turbulent history, being stolen and recovered multiple times over the centuries, until it vanished for good between 1970 and 1975 during the Long Nol regime. Thanks to a handful of rare texts and the expertise of a new generation, Citadel is bringing this symbolic and cultural Cambodian royal sword back to life, both by innovating and honoring ancestral traditions.
We just saw this book, this old book that we have recently been able to obtain in Hong Kong, thanks to the research of our friend David McCartney. And thanks to this book, we were able to refine our knowledge of ancient sacred swords of Cambodia. And it's this sword that we are able to make today. They are made by these guys who are Cambodian and which today reproduce the work of the ancients. This style that we can see here, in particular, this phoenix carving, and the other carvings, we get them from a number of documents, especially the book I mentioned earlier, and also this large book, this huge book called Kabak, that we can buy in Phnom Penh, and that is a sum of compilation of Khmer art, which is really extraordinary and which is extremely useful in the work we do.
This entrepreneur who discovered the complexity of sword forging has gradually surrounded himself with experts in their fields. Among them, Jacques Brinon for crafting swords according to the strict rules of the art, Émile Streng for achieving perfect blade balance and polish, and Stéphane Champagnac, a graduate of the Saint-Étienne School of Gunsmithing, who worked by his side for many years, helping to train staff and pass on essential skills.
To come back a moment on training, what I had done at the very beginning. So when we started looking for people to work in the workshop or at the forge, we took boys who had just introduced themselves that came from all over, some from the countryside, and they didn't know how to do much. They couldn't even read. And one day, I even realized that they pretended to use a caliper. You see, to please me, he was looking at the caliper, but he couldn't read. And so I brought in a gentleman who was a gunsmith, graduated from the school of Saint-Étienne. He stayed with me here for 6 years, and it was he who initially trained everyone. After 6 years, we had trained people. From the moment you have trained people, well, the people who are trained, train those who come after. That's what happened. Today I have trained people. I have no training problems. Because if I employ someone, even if they are not trained, as long as he is skilled with his hands, he will learn very quickly. It will take, of course, a few months, because making a katana, it's difficult, it's complicated. It takes time, but he will learn here, because here we know how to do it. Here we have some skills. We don't know everything, but we still know how to do a lot of things, so those who knows, train those who do not knows.
In a globalized world dominated by mass production, this workshop is a sanctuary. Every hammer strike, every engraving, every polish is an act of transmission. Dominique Eluer speaks humbly of his role as both conductor and catalyst, guiding apprentices who, over the years, have become masters in the art of forging.
The Cambodian engravers that I employ, I didn't train them. They worked with me for many years. So the only thing I do, and this is very important, but it's not the most difficult, although it's not too easy either. My job is to be demanding, to ensure that they progress, And to progress, it's important to have someone who requires you to the best. It is a question of respect in reality. That is, if you have respect for people, you owe them to try to get the best out of them, and accepting an average quality work is not a sign of respect. Even children should be encouraged to excellency, when possible, of course not right away, but to go on this path and accept that if they don't use their talent, like, what have you done with your talent? Well, that's not correct. And so, I think that my own work, it was my job during the past 22 years, is to be demanding. And it is because of this requirement that we have obtained the results that we can show today. People who have come to work with us at the beginning, the blacksmith I mentioned earlier, well, he was a countryside blacksmith, so he already knew a lot of things about the forge. We hadn't learned that. What we taught him is a number of heat treatments, including the differential quenching I was talking about earlier. Then there too, it is the requirement, the quality requirement, because if you have the respect of your customers, and you want them to get their money's worth, you have to give them something that holds up. Yeah, it's a question of honorable trade, I would say. You can ask your customers to pay a lot. Simply it is necessary that you too give them something that is fine, that you give them something that is beautiful, which is exceptional, which is unique, so they will never regret paying dearly.